Hi, so welcome to this video, which is essentially a primer about Mozdeh, which is a really great tool for social media and big data analysis. And essentially I'm going to kind of take you through a few of the functions of Mozdeh, what you can kind of do with it, but also how this can be applied to, politics, the study of politics and the study of political communication. So my name's Rosalynd Southern and I'm a lecturer in political communication at the University of Liverpool. And my research largely focuses on online political communication. So I have looked at the way social media has been used in campaigns in the last 4 general elections now, and also the Brexit referendum. So yeah, I tend to look at how it's used for kind of campaigning, interacting with voters, the types of kind of messages that are on there. But more recently I've kind of moved away from just looking at studies that focus on election campaigns to move to kind of studies that focus outside of elections as well. So I have examined the use of uncivil language and abuse towards female MPs on Twitter, or all MPs, but from a gender perspective. I've also started to look at kind of alternative political communication, so I look at kind of memes and online satire. But yeah, essentially I'm going to take you through a couple of projects that I've been involved in that use some of the techniques that you can learn and apply through Mozdeh. So Mozdeh has many functions, and it can actually be applied across many different types of social media. So it can be used to look at YouTube comments, and you can kind of look at YouTube comment network, so you can look at how people kind of comment across different videos and across different kind of subscription channels, and you can look at whether there's nice networks in these and how they talk to each other. Do they deliberate? Do they just argue? These kind of things. You can also look at Reddit, and you can look at different subreddits, and again you can look at kind of how people are interacting, different types of networks, or you can actually analyze the text themselves. So these are two essentially quite under-researched platforms as well, but we know that they have a lot of political content on there. Reddit has a very popular subreddit called /poll. There's a lot of political discourse going on there, lots of data, and you can use Mozdeh to look at these platforms. But today I'm going to focus on Twitter because that's where most of my research is focused as well. Largely because it's quite easy to get Twitter data, and because this does tend to be the most kind of commonly used platform in some ways for politics. So in the UK, a lot of political journalists hang out on there. A lot of MPs use that as their kind of primary channel for campaigning or getting information out and these kind of things. So yeah, I'm going to take you through a few of the functions of Mozdeh. And then I'm going to kind of show you how not show you, but I'm going to explain how I've used them in projects in the past. So hopefully this should give you a few ideas about different projects that can be pursued, and different projects that you can use Mozdeh to kind of assess. Yeah, so one of the key functions of Mozdeh, I guess, is the gathering of tweets or gathering other texts, and this can be done in 2 different ways. So you can do this by a kind of simple keyword search, and this allows you to go back and collect tweets that are a maximum of 7 days old. So you can go back further than that when you're gathering tweets, but things start to fall through the cracks a little bit, kind of older than 7 days. So to be kind of, really stringent, in terms of what you've gathered and know that you've been able to gather everything you want to kind of keep to a maximum of 7 days old. And Mozdeh allows you to collect up to 18,000 tweets in a 15-minute period, or up to 1.7 million tweets a day. So you're going to have plenty of data for your project, essentially. Yeah, if you do want bigger than that, you have to kind of go up to Twitter, although Twitter has just announced a kind of academic module. So yes, you can get more data as an academic. Thanks, Twitter. So yeah, so that's one way that you can do it. You can do that through keyword searches, or the other key way that you can do it is you can gather tweets from one or more user. So essentially you just kind of program in, or use through the interface, and you just put their kind of handles into that, and then you can get a maximum of the most recent 3,200 tweets. So this is quite a lot, and this goes back, hopefully, unless they tweet an awful lot, this will go back a little bit further for you. So yeah, some ideas of how these can kind of be used. Overall keyword searches. This allows us to assess, I guess in some ways, one way of doing it is to look at a more kind of broad brushstrokes approach. So you might just want to look at how people are talking in general about a popular topic, or not even popular, just any topic that you're interested in. So for instance, COVID-19, we could look at how people are talking about COVID-19. If you're interested in, say, disinformation or conspiracy theories, you might want to kind of gather every tweet over a week that talks about COVID-19 and see how prevalent is disinformation, are conspiracy theories. You might want to actually look at if this is being countered by kind of expert opinion. So are there a lot of medics on these hashtags or in this kind of keyword search countering disinformation? Is that something that's kind of maybe a positive about social media, that we can see these experts? Maybe we might want to look at a more focused question, say. So I know that there are some people working at the moment on this idea of kind of vaccine skepticism, and the idea that some communities actually have quite valid skepticism about vaccines because historically they've been kind of used against them and kind of things like this. So that might be a project that you want to look at. So you'd maybe have to tweak your keyword search then. And another thing that I just as an example that I thought off the top of my head, because it has been very salient on social media the last few days, is kind of the GameStop controversy, or I don't know if it's even a controversy, but you could kind of look at the way people are talking about that. There's some very political discourse that's going on around that, and looking at the idea of whether kind of people are kicking back against elites and these kind of things, whether it's a hangover from Occupy Wall Street, things like that. So you could just kind of use a keyword to look at something in very broad brushstrokes or a little bit more focused, depending on what you wanted to do. And actually, if you do something that if you kind of use a topic or a keyword that is very focused, in some ways you might even be able to get kind of all the tweets. If this was something that was just a short-term kind of phenomenon maybe, or you just wanted to look at a week in the aftermath of something that happened, then you might be able to even get almost all the tweets for that keyword if you were kind of clever about it. So yeah, and the other way that we can gather tweets or texts is by using actual user handles, or I think you can use the tweet IDs as well. So I have done this in a project in the past. So I've done it several projects actually, but the most recent one was in the 2019 general election. Colleagues and I gathered all tweets from all leader and all party accounts. So, and it has to be said, across the election period, this was far fewer than 3,200 tweets. So, you can get a really decent amount of data via Mozdeh. And, gathering all the tweets from each party during the campaign and each leader during the campaign allowed us to, analyse and code the tweets for these kind of common campaign tactics that have a kind of long-standing literature on them. So we can kind of study these. So this is the idea of whether they were providing information about the campaign, whether a lot of the tweets contain policy. So this was kind of something that was theorised when social media first took off, that Twitter campaigning might, kind of erode policy focus even more than it already was being eroded, the kind of direction of travel, whether there'd be an increase in just really personality politics. So we can look at personalisation on Twitter, we can look at attacks, personal attacks, and then this kind of whether this kind of more traditional campaigning is going on, so whether there's mobilisation happening, so calls to action and stuff like this. You can do some really, really nice analysis with it. And, it doesn't have to be this kind of traditional sort of politics and party politics that I kind of focus on. You might be interested in, say, climate politics, so you might want to gather all the tweets coming from all the different Extinction Rebellion kind of accounts that are out there. You might be really interested in, obviously, the other big story of this summer is Black Lives Matter, so you could gather all the tweets that are coming out. There's hundreds and hundreds of Black Lives Matter Twitter accounts across many different cities. You might want to look at how they are kind of framing their arguments, things like that. So you can do this on any idea that you've got. You just have to kind of sample the accounts that you would like to look at, and then you can get tweets up to 3,200 from those accounts. So this allows us to answer all kinds of different questions about social media, politics, campaigning, protest, things like this. Yeah, so the second kind of function that I wanted to talk about through Mozdeh was the fact that you can do sentiment analysis with this tool. So I would urge anyone who wants to do this automated sentiment analysis to read the methodology behind it. Obviously, you're going to have to put that into your paper anyway. But, the kind of advantage here is that it's automated and it's quick. And this can be very, very useful when you've got loads and loads of data. So essentially, sentiment analysis looks at the sort of words in the text and assigns whether it's negative or positive or very negative, kind of things like this, based on certain keywords like love, hate, etc. So it can be a really useful and kind of quick tool for doing this kind of thing. So yeah, as I think I said at the start, I have studied on incivility and abuse towards female elected representatives. We were actually lucky enough to get quite a lot of money, so we actually coded our tweets manually. But obviously, this is, very, very time consuming. You do need money. And the sentiment analysis tool that can be applied through Mozdeh does this much more quickly. It is a little bit more limited. We had a lot more categories that we coded manually, but it can be a kind of quick way to get an idea of some of these kind of phenomenon. So you might just want to look at whether there was more negativity in tweets, or whether, male politicians tweet more negatively, whether female politicians tweet more positively, things like this, whether there was more negativity towards women representatives, towards black and minority ethnic representatives, say, kind of things like this. There's lots of different questions, or you can kind of maybe look at it more broadly or from a kind of cross platform perspective. So is Reddit more positive when talking about politics than Twitter, for instance? This is kind of something that's quite interesting, and there is a bit of a gap in the literature with cross-platform studies, so that might be something that would be really interesting and something that you might want to look at. So yeah, it can be very, very useful in studies of tone, incivility, things like this. Yeah, and then the final function that I wanted to look at was the topic modelling function. So this is something, again, it's an automatic function that Mozdeh carries out for you, and essentially it is able to sort of produce a topic for any of the texts that you kind of gather. And again, it uses a sort of keyword or something called bag of words, and it will look at kind of words in the text and assign a topic to those texts. So this can be really useful, and in politics and political communication, you might want to look at well, what are people talking about? What are people really concerned about? Can we actually even tell this through social media, or is it kind of too messy and kind of things like that? So yeah, I have used this in a study that I've been involved in recently. So I think this was on the 2017 election. It can be a very useful tool. So what we wanted to do is we wanted to look at whether candidates essentially tweeting in line with their constituents' views and their constituents' concerns gave them any sort of electoral advantage. So what we did is we gathered all the tweets from every candidate during, across the whole election period. And, like I was saying before about the kind of sentiment analysis, this is hundreds of thousands of tweets. This is something that would be, very, very difficult, very, very time consuming. You'd probably need lots of money to actually code this manually. So what you can actually do instead is apply some topic modelling to this, and then you can see, what actual kind of issues are candidates tweeting about, and then what we did was we took British election study data, which has a really nice variable called most important issue. So they just get everyone to say, what are you most concerned about, and they kind of compress it into different topics, and then we can see, what was each constituency. We have it at the constituency level. We can see what was each constituency most concerned about, and then we can also see what each candidate, via the topic modelling, we can see what each candidate was tweeting most about, and then we can see whether those topics line up. And then, once you have how well they line up, you can model that in lots of different ways. And, it's something that, theoretically, you would think that tweeting more in line with your constituents' concerns would provide you an electoral advantage. It's something that you should know as a candidate, maybe. But it's kind of something that's been quite under-researched in the literature. So we were able to kind of address these questions, look at these questions using topic modelling. So it's a really useful tool, and there's lots of different ways that you could use this as well. You might just want to look again more broadly, what are people talking about this week? What's the most important political issue this week? Maybe outside of the ones that are really obvious. So what are the kind of things maybe bubbling beneath the surface that say when the pandemic goes away, people are actually going to be really concerned about? These are kind of things that we can look at using topic modelling. So it is a very useful tool for political communication analysis, and if you study social media. So yeah, I hope this has been useful. I hope this has given you an idea of the sort of things that you can do via Mozdeh and the sort of functions that are available to you. And I hope this has given you a few ideas about how this can be applied to political communication.